So the Indiana Fever are currently in good form. They are 6 of their last 9. Well, they've won 6 of their last 8. They've won 4 of their last 5. And to be honest, they're looking like one of the form teams in Dublin.
6 wins out of their last 8, 4 out of their last 5, and suddenly the narrative around the Indiana Fever is shifting. They are sitting right there near the top tier of the WNBA conversation. But the front office is looking at a hard truth that most fans are ignoring. A trade deadline is looming in just 11 days, and the roster choices they make right now will dictate whether they are legitimate title contenders or just another team running it back for an early exit.
It is a really simple one. It is by trading for Sika Kone. Demiris Dantas and a 2029 second-round pick for Sika Kone. Sika Kone doesn't get on the floor.
Let us start with the most straightforward move on the board, because if you are looking for immediate front-court help, the answer might already be sitting overseas, waiting for a call. We are looking at a scenario where adding a proven international piece changes the rotation floor entirely. This brings us straight to the first target on the list.
And she's not going to play with Bree Jones there. Sika Kone was the MVP of the Spanish League this year. She is younger than KK Timpson. I think she's younger. And she is a better player. KK does have more upside, and KK does better.
Sika Kone is not getting meaningful floor time. She is not locked into a major role with her current squad, and yet she walked away as the MVP of the Spanish League this year. She is younger than KK Timpson. She brings immediate size to the front court, and she represents a clear upgrade in sheer physical presence over names like Dantas or Van Lith. Now, is she going to transform this franchise by 10% overnight? Probably not. But if you can make a calculated transaction to squeeze out even 1% more efficiency, you make the call.
Overshoot their hand, but Aneesah Morrow. Aneesah Morrow, straight up for Raven Johnson. I think their salaries are near identical. And Aneesah Morrow is averaging 10.5 points and 9.5 rebounds per game.
That brings us to trade number 2. And this is where things get genuinely complicated because it touches on a very sensitive roster dynamic. We are talking about an asset swap that involves a player putting up double-double numbers while her current team is finding ways to win without her. Look at the numbers and the puzzle starts to take shape.
Game this year. She has missed 6 games in a row for the Connecticut Sun. Some for personal reasons, some for conditioning reasons. She's just not currently playing, and the Connecticut Sun are unironically better without her. They've started winning games. That's not her fault, but obviously her and Rashid Mazian don't really get along.
Aneesah Morrow is averaging 10.5 points and 9.5 rebounds per game this year. She has missed time due to a mix of personal reasons and conditioning issues, and the Connecticut Sun have ironically gone on a winning streak in her absence. When you look at how the rotation operates, with players like Aliyah Boston locking down the paint and the coaching staff leaning heavily into alternative lineup combinations, Morrow has found herself squeezed down to single-digit minutes.
In my opinion, Raven Johnson's gone out of the rotation. And if you want to say, oh, we're Raven for the future, if you can figure out a way of making Aneesah Morrow a winning player, because it's clear that she can score and she can get boards. If you can figure out a way of making her a winning player, having her beside Aliyah.
A straight-up swap involving Raven Johnson matches the salaries almost identically, but it forces us to ask a deeper strategic question about team composition. Raven Johnson has slipped out of the regular rotation, and while some argue for keeping her as an asset for the distant future, Morrow gives you an immediate, polished presence at the 4 spot. If a coaching staff can figure out how to harness her scoring and rebounding inside a winning culture, the ceiling for this front court changes overnight.
And there's one trade with the Sparks. I think the money works out. I think this money works out, and this is a swing. And this is something where it's like...
Now let us push past the surface level fixes and look at a massive swing trade, one that targets a Western Conference franchise facing a looming financial wall. This is where the business side of the league intersects directly with on-court desperation, setting up a scenario that could unfold before the deadline hits.
So if you guys don't know, the LA Sparks have had team control over Rae Burrell for years. She is currently, as far as I'm aware, on a minimum contract. But at the end of the year, whoever has her signed does not have team control over her. She is on a minimum contract.
The Los Angeles Sparks have held team control over Rae Burrell for years, and she has been playing on a minimum contract. But here is the catch that changes everything. At the end of this season, she becomes a restricted free agent and is projected to command a substantial payday, somewhere in the range of $500,000 to $600,000. Given the long-term financial commitments the Sparks already have tied up in players like Ari McDonald and Dereka Hamby, They simply cannot afford to keep her next year.
Lose her next year. The Sparks are currently 10 and 15. They are 2.5 games off the playoffs, and they're on a 4-game losing streak, and Kelsey Plum's currently injured.
Look at where the Sparks stand right now. They are 10.5, sitting 2.5 games back of the playoff cut line, riding a 4-game losing streak, and dealing with an injury to Kelsey Plum. At a certain point, a front office has to look at the books, recognize the reality of their standings, and start offloading high-value assets before they walk away for nothing.
If I'm the Indiana Fever, Raven Johnson straight up for Rae Burrell. Rae Burrell comes in starting at the 3 immediately. Sophie Cunningham becomes the Lexi Hull becomes the backup shooting guard. Sophie Cunningham starts to hover between the 2 and the 3. And Rae Burrell can play the 3.
If you are the Indiana Fever, this is where you step in with a direct proposal. Raven Johnson straight up for Rae Burrell. Burrell walks right into the starting lineup at the small forward position, sliding Sophie Cunningham or Lexi Hull into a much more natural bench role where they can provide instant shooting. It upgrades the perimeter scoring immediately without mortgaging the future.
So in this one, this is a non-playoff team having a player that I can guarantee you Rae Burrell is being shopped, because there's no point having a contract like this on the books when you know you can't afford her next year and you're not going to be very good. So if the Sparks go and lose 2 more games in a row, they're as good as out of the playoffs.
Pay close attention to the Sparks' schedule over the next stretch, because it is going to force their hand completely. They face a gauntlet of elite playoff opponents, and if they drop even 2 of their next few winnable matchups, their season is effectively over. Once that math catches up to them, shopping a cost-controlled asset like Burrell becomes an absolute necessity rather than an option.
Trades where I'm like, these trades right here are a little bit complicated. I don't think the Fever would make the trades, but I really like both of them. So, and they are both trades with expansion teams, because it doesn't look like either of the Portland Fire or the Toronto Tempo are going to make the playoff.
That brings us to the complex tier of trades, the ones involving expansion teams that are slowly fading out of the postseason picture, just like the Sparks. When you examine the Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo rosters, you start to see hidden gems locked into minor roles on tiny contracts, opening up a window for creative general managers to strike.
My trade is for Maria Conde. Maria Conde is 29 years old, has been a superstar in Spain for her whole career, is in her rookie year this year, averaging 8.6, 4.4, 2.4 assists per game, is 6'3", can play the 2, 3, or 4, a decent rebounder, a plus defender, she'd be the best perimeter defender on the Fever, but that's not saying.
Let us look at Maria Conde on the Toronto Tempo. She is 29 years old, a seasoned veteran who built a stellar reputation as a star in Spain, putting up solid all-around numbers in her rookie WNBA campaign. She gives you a capable perimeter defender who can stretch the floor at the 3 or 4 position, grab key rebounds, and create her own shot off the dribble.
So, Maria Conde for Grace Van Sloten, the Fever's 2027 second-round pick, and a 2028 and 2029 pick swap. So, if you're Toronto, you can see the huge upside. If the Indiana Fever implode, you have 2 pick swaps.
To pry a player like Conde away from an expansion franchise, a simple player swap will not suffice. The Fever would likely need to package Grace Van Lith alongside their 2027 second-round pick and future pick swaps out into 2028 and 2029. To an outside observer, offering double pick swaps might look like an unnecessary risk, but front offices only make those concessions when they calculate their own window of dominance to be wide open.
For them. So there's always a risk with giving double pick swaps, but also for the Fever, if the Fever are confident enough in staying good, you're okay with throwing in these pick swaps, because if you stay good, they don't matter. It's basically like getting Maria Conde for Van Sloten and a second-round pick, which is a steal, because you are getting by.
History tells us that giving up unprotected pick swaps can turn into a nightmare if a franchise suddenly implodes, much like we saw with the chaotic fallout in Chicago and Dallas following past blockbuster deals. But if Indiana believes in their core foundation for the next 3 years, trading away those speculative future rights to secure a ready-now starting forward is a risk worth taking.
If the Fever could pull this trade off, it would be absolutely monumental. So, there's a player in Toronto who I think would be an unbelievable fit Portland, who would be an unbelievable fit, in my opinion, on the Indiana Fever, because she is on a contract where she is making $325K this year, $341 next year, and $357 the year after. She is on tiny money for the next 3 years.
Now we reach the final possibility, a transaction that would alter the entire landscape of this franchise if it could somehow be pulled off. We are talking about a player tucked away on the Portland roster who represents the exact archetype modern basketball demands. A 6'4" stretch big who can protect the rim, distribute from the high post, and command a tiny salary for the next 3 seasons.
Like tiny money as Luisa Geiselsoder. What would the Fever give up to get Geiselsoder? Geiselsoder is a 6'4" shooting big who is a relatively decent shot blocker, a relatively decent passer for her size. She's just gone out of the rotation. As of right, or not out of rotation, like her role has been diminishing. So someone like
Luisa Geiselsoder has seen her role diminish recently, as players like Sarah Williams and Megan Gustafson earned more trust in the rotation, but her contract structure remains an absolute bargain at roughly $325,000, scaling up slowly over the next 3 years. Slotting her next to Aliyah Boston gives the Fever an inside-out dynamic that completely redefines their offensive spacing.
Contract. So if the Indiana Fever want to keep Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark next year, between now and the start of free agency, they have to trade Mo Billings or Lexi Hull. There is they can keep Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell. They can't keep both of them on Sophie Cunningham, but they can keep Caitlin Clark.
However, unlocking a deal of this magnitude requires confronting the elephant in the room, the financial reality of the salary cap. If Indiana wants to retain both Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell long-term, they cannot maintain their current roster structure without shedding major salary. Moving off contracts like Sophie Cunningham or Marina Mabre becomes a mandatory mathematical hurdle.
By the Indiana Fever forcing Caitlin to play on a rookie deal, it's basically the Indiana Fever saying, okay, we are losing Caitlin Clark in 2027, at the end of the 2027 season. Caitlin's playing 4 years in Indiana and then she's gone. But
this forces the organization into a brutal conceptual corner. If Caitlin Clark forgoes her veteran extension to play out her rookie deal for 1 more year, it merely kicks the existential financial crisis down the road by 12 months, ultimately leading to a high-stakes showdown where retaining both Clark and Boston on Supermax deals becomes nearly impossible under the current cap constraints.
Contract. And find a competent center who is a competent 6'4" stretch big who is under contract till 2029. You have it for this year, next year, the year after, and the year after. So, you have her for 26, 27, and 28. You have her 3 years. You have a much, much better version of Demir.
To pull off a trade for a player like Soto, the package would have to include Marina Mabre, future 2nd and 3rd round picks, and 1st round pick swaps spanning 2028 and 2020. It sounds like an astronomical price to pay, but finding an elite cost-controlled stretch big who is locked under contract through 2029 is a rarity in this league.
You're definitely losing Caitlin, but if you're the Indiana Fever and you're like, you know what, we think we're so close, we're going to give it 1 more year, 1 more roll of dice, it's going to cost that much to get off Mo Billings and bring in a player that can play at the center position for cheap. So anyway, yeah, that is the video. Let me know which of these trades you guys would like, or if you don't like.
It boils down to a fundamental philosophical choice for the front office. Do you protect the long-term financial health of the organization? Or do you sacrifice future flexibility to go all in on a single championship window with this exact core? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit subscribe to stay ahead of the deadline madness, and tell me which of these trades you would actually pull the trigger on.